Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military of a Summary channel. On this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. We have lots of very interesting statements, we have lots of changes on the ground, and we have massive attacks. So let's start with the statements. Today the President of Ukraine Zelensky emphasized that he wants to build a big drone factory in Britain, offer new technologies and share them with our partners. Of course, we're ready to share all our experience with the United Kingdom, and I hope that the United Kingdom will do the same. And basically a few hours later we received another very interesting report, this time from the United Kingdom, and according to information we have, United Kingdom Prime Minister Andy Burnham is expected to sign a deal with Zelensky allowing Ukraine to mass produce UK designed stock clock signal jammers. The devices are fitted to attack drones to disrupt Russian air defenses, making them harder to detect. Britain will transfer the intellectual property while continuing its support for Ukraine, and both countries will use battlefield data to improve future weapons. So as you can see, basically Zelensky is saying that he's going to build a factory in the territory of the United Kingdom, but basically this is not going to be his factory, neither his nor Ukraine factory. This is going to be the United Kingdom factory. Drones would be, as you can see, very powerful, very smart drones. These drones would be transferred to Ukraine, and then Ukraine would attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. And according to the statements, we see that most likely it would be very difficult for Russians to detect these drones, at least during the first stages of attacks. Of course, the Russians in time will find a key, will find a solution, but during the first 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, the Ukrainians most likely would be able to deal significant damage using the UK's drones. And according to the situation, of course, the Russians have already prepared an answer to this question. Putin has announced that the work on Russia's Poseidon system is nearing completion, saying it is moving towards operational deployment. Poseidon is a nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed, autonomous underwater drone designed to travel thousands of miles beneath the sea before striking coastal cities, navy bases, and or carrier groups. Because of its range, endurance, and underwater approach, it is widely regarded as one of Russia's most significant strategic deterrent weapons and is often referred to as a doomsday weapon. So this is a clear message to the Western countries and probably to the United Kingdom that this game is going to be very difficult and we won't see winners of this situation. Now let's move further. Let's return back to Ukraine and let's discuss the situation on the ground. As I told you a minute ago, during the previous 12 hours, significant number of changes were recorded. And first let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction. Right before we started making this video, pro-Russian sources stated that as a result of clashes, the Russians established control over the village of Khrystoforivka. We will adjust the map during the day, and during the next updates, during the next video, we will discuss this in details, but probably we will adjust the map like this. We will color back the settlement of Chernovata and the complete Russian control, and we will color the settlement of Khrystoforivka. And now we see that's most likely the Ukrainians that are located in this pocket were encircled by Russians. Most likely we're talking about hundreds of Ukrainians that were caught by the Russians in Cauldron without any chances to escape this situation. If you remember, during the previous days and weeks, the Russians improved their position significantly through the northern flank of this pocket, and today Russians reported that they captured Khrystoforivka. And telling the truth, there is a video with Russian soldiers in this area with the Russian flag raised at least at 2 or 3 points of the settlement. So this is the situation in this area, and of course if it happens, if this is the reality, most likely the Russians would be able to secure this pocket within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then the Russians would continue offensive operation further in the western direction towards the city of Zaporizhzhia. So the situation, as we can see here, is quite complicated for the armed forces of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dobropillia direction, where the map has been adjusted once again. So this is the situation by the end of the 25th of July of 2026. Now let's start it from the 23rd of July or 22nd of July, even off from the 21st of July. This is exactly the moment when everything began, when the Ukraine's defense began crumbling in this area. So this is the moment when the Russians began their major offensive operation, and between the 21st of July and 27th of July, the Russians, as you can see, have improved their positions significantly. First, the Russians improved their positions through the eastern parts of the settlement of Dobropillia by taking under complete control several blocks, micro-districts, and the TO514 road. Then the Russians finished the battle for the settlement of Belitska, and during the previous 3-4 days, the Russians published probably dozens of episodes with Russian soldiers through the city raising the Russian flag. As for the 24th of July, we haven't received anything. As for the 25th of July, the Russians began advancing further in the western direction, leaving the city of Belitska and moving straight forward in the direction of the villages of Svetle and Chernihiv. During the 26th of July, the Russians reported that they captured the settlement of Shevchenkova, and the Russians, as you can see, improved their position significantly through the fields by taking under complete control or partial control additional territories and villages through this territory. And as of the beginning of the 27th of July, we received the report that the Russians improved their position significantly through the central part of the settlement of Dobropillia, and the Russians improved their positions through the northern parts of the city, trying to cut main logistic lines and support lines that go in the direction of the city. Meanwhile, the Russians accelerate their attacks through the western parts of the city and through the western citadel of the city of Dobropillia with aviation. During the previous night, we received lots of videos how the Russians were softening defenses of the armored forces of Ukraine. So according to the current situation, and the most important, according to the current pace of changes of map, we believe that the Russians have real chances to finish the battle for the entire Dobropillia agglomeration before autumn comes. So during August of 2026, most likely, these territories would be taken by Russians, and the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back towards empty space, towards these small villages and so on, without any chances to organize a counter-offensive operation or to force the Russians to fall back. Obviously, after the end of the battle for the city of Dobropillia, the Russians first of all would try to create a buffer zone around the settlement, secure zone with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to prepare some surprise for Russians, and when it happens, we will see a full-scale and a major offensive operation in the northern direction with the purpose to outflank the settlement of Kramatorsk with the purpose to attack the city from behind, and this offensive operation may lead to another encirclement of the Ukrainians through the Sloviansk-Drushkovka agglomeration. As for this agglomeration itself, during the previous 12 hours, additional changes were also recorded through the southern flank. So these are the changes on the ground between the 23rd and the 27th of July. So this is exactly the period of time when the next phase of offensive operation started from the Russian side. During the 24th of July, the Russians improved their positions through the pockets between the cities of Chasiv Yar and Konstantinovka, and we received the report on this matter. During the 25th of July, we started receiving reports that the Russians answered the settlement of Osikovka and began advancing through the Alexeyevo-Drushkovka agglomeration. Through the 26th of July, we received the report that the Russians finished the battle for the settlement of Tarskoye, and the Russians continue advancing further through the southwestern flank of the city of Drushkovka, and the Russians began outflanking maneuver of the settlement of Alexeyevo-Drushkovka from the southwest and from the southeast. And by the beginning of the 27th of July, we received additional reports. The Russians improved their positions significantly. As you can see, these are the changes. First of all, the Russians finished the battle for the pockets between the cities of Chasiv Yar and Konstantinovka, and the Russians are moving further along railways, and currently the sources reported that the villages of Popasne and Bezemyanne currently were transferred into the gray zone. The Russians Russians improved their positions through tree lines to the south of Alexeyevka-Drushkovka, and the Russians continue advancing towards the settlement of Toretska. So the Drushkovka major offensive operation intensifies. As of now, the Russians are focused to break through Ukraine's defenses through the settlement of Alexeyevka-Drushkovka, but it seems that this battle won't last for a very long period of time. As for the northern flank of the Sloviansk-Drushkovka agglomeration, during the previous night we received a very interesting report regarding the situation in the city of Nikolaevka. Today local sources published this picture where we can see buildings marked with red or pink colors, and all these colors mean the level of damage the Russians deal to these constructions. And according to all these pictures, we can say that by the beginning of the 27th of July of 2026, the Russians have destroyed or significantly or badly damaged up to 60 or 70% of the entire settlement of Nikolaevka, which means that defenses of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area have been softened as much as possible, which means that most likely the Ukrainians will not be able to show fierce resistance when the Russians begin their major infiltration. So in coming days, the situation may change significantly in this area in the Russian favor. As for the Liman direction, we haven't received anything from this area, just small changes on the ground through the settlement of Barova, according to different pro-Russian sources. Additional strongholds, as you can see, were captured by Russians, and the Russians continue advancing. As for the northern direction, during the previous 12 hours, small changes were recorded around the settlement of Bely Kolodets, and these are the changes on the ground. This is the end of the 26th, and this is the beginning of the 27th of July. The Russians captured additional tree line and entered the settlement of Yurchenkova. Furthermore, the Russians improved their positions through the most northeastern flank around the village of Varvarovka, and the Russians improved their positions towards the settlement of Berezniki. So, as you can see, the news around the northeastern pocket is tightening. Most likely, the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this territory before the end of the first decade of August of 2026. As for the Sumy direction, during the previous 12 hours, no changes were recorded. Now let's talk about massive attacks. During the previous nights, both the Russians and the Ukrainians attacked each other using hundreds of drones. The Ukrainians launched, according to different sources, 340 drones deep inside of the territory of Russia. And as you can see, according to these arrows, the Ukrainians were mainly attacking the southern regions and were trying to break through Russia's air defenses in the direction of the central part of Russia. And during the nights, we received lots of reports and lots of updates. First of all, from the Belgorod, from the city of Belgorod, the Ukrainians were attacking the settlement, and during the nights we received lots of videos where we can see fire, where we can see destructions, where we can see damaged buildings. Furthermore, we can see lots of videos with explosions. So it seems that the overnight attack was one of the biggest attacks carried out by the Ukrainians when the Ukrainians were trying to deal significant damage, or when Ukrainians were trying to break through the Belgorod air defense systems and forces with the purpose to move further deep inside of the territory of Russia. But due to the Russian air defense work, it seems that the Russians managed to bring down lots of drones over the city of Belgorod, and just probably several dozens of drones managed to break through the city of Belgorod and move further in the eastern direction. And later we received the report that the Ukrainians were trying to attack the settlement of Barok and this oil base. As of the morning of the 27th of July of 2026, it was recorded, it was confirmed that the Ukrainian drones were recorded over the territory, and it was recorded that several explosions were heard by locals in this area. But as of the morning of the 27th of July, it is impossible to confirm whether the Ukrainians managed to deal damage to this oil base or not. It seems that the Russians managed to repel this attack, and the biggest and the mandatory and the main number of drones were destroyed over the city of Belgorod. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that this morning the Russians intercepted and destroyed 276 drones of the armed forces of Ukraine. But the central part of Russia wasn't the only direction of Ukraine's attack. Lots of drones, as we discussed discussed, attacked the southern regions of Russia, and there was another very heavy battle, air battle, in the area of the settlement of Rostov. During the night, we received lots of videos with explosions, and I would like to remind you that the city of Rostov is the place where the Russians have their general staff, and it seems that the Ukrainians were trying to attack the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Lots of explosions, as you can see, were recorded through this territory, but it seems that the Russians were also able to repel this attack and to force the Ukrainians to change their plans. So summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that during the overnight attack from the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainians haven't managed to achieve results. And I would like to remind you that it seems today Zelensky is going to travel to the United States of America, where he's going to have a meeting with the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, which means that most likely during this meeting, during this travel, the Russians will attack the territory of Ukraine using hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles, and during the upcoming nights we should expect another massive attack or even a mega strike from the Russian side. Between the 26th and the 27th of July, the Russians were also attacking the territory of Ukraine using 147 air means. And the Russians were mainly attacking once again the Odessa region. Lots of videos were published from this area. Lots of vessels once again were damaged and destroyed by Russians. And the Russians were attacking the central part of Ukraine, the territory between the city of Dnipro and the city of Zaporizhzhia. First, let's discuss in details the city of Zaporizhzhia. Here we have a picture of consequences of attack of the facility in the central part of the settlement. This warehouse was damaged by Russians. Yesterday, the Russians attacked the Nova Poshta terminal. Today, the Russians attacked warehouses to the south. The city of Dnipro, the Russians were bombing the city during the nights, and the Russians continued bombing the city during this morning. Lots of videos were published where we can see explosions and where we can see consequences of attack. As you can see, entire micro districts were wiped out by Russians as a result of attack. The most powerful attack took place in the area of the settlement of Sinelnikova. The Russians destroyed this facility, and in this video, for example, we can see first seconds after the Russians attacked the territory, and as you can see, big fire broke out. In this video, we can see, for example, the pictures where we can see also consequences of attack. So the Russians destroyed another facility that most likely the Ukrainians were using for logistic purposes. Furthermore, the Russians continued attacking the northern parts of Ukraine, and lots of explosions were also recorded through the city of Chernihiv, and as a result of attack, this warehouse, this construction was wiped out by Russians. So we see that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine accelerates, and the most important thing, we see that more and more European countries are getting involved into the conflict, especially the United Kingdom. They say that they will provide technologies to Ukraine, but the thing is that the factory would be located on the territory of the United Kingdom. The technologies of the United Kingdom would be used to produce drones, and then these drones, and Ukraine will be the only side who would use these drones to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. So pretty weird situation, but let's wait and see what the Russians are going to do with this. As of now, of course, they most likely will not attack any European country, but obviously the Russians can change their tactics and can change or expand the geography of strikes. And that's it for the short video. The military summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.